So did you see me set that thing up upside down again? One of these days I'll get it right on the first try. So you guys are wanting to do some solo camping for the first time. Today we're going to go over some tips and tricks that might help you out. Let's get it. First up, let's talk about pre-planning a trip. Yes, I mean writing a list. I know that sounds preposterous coming from me, who doesn't like to write lists, but for your first solo trip, I suggest you write a list. And that's going to help you make sure you don't forget the things that you really need, and it's just going to make your trip go a lot easier. Now, along with that list, I would suggest pre-scouting the location. If you can't physically go there in person, pre-scout it with Google Maps. But Google Maps is not always accurate. Sometimes things will look like you have a water source or what have you, but it may not be there. So always, if possible, pre-scout the location. Go out, check it out, make sure it's what you're actually looking for, because those things are going to make your camping trip better. And the better your first solo camping trip goes, the more likely you are to do it again. So make a list. Make sure you have everything you need. Pre-scout your location. Another thing I highly suggest is to download your Google Maps offline. That way, if for whatever reason you don't have good cell coverage out there, you can still use your Google Maps in the area that you have picked. So now you've got a list, you have pre-scouted your location, and you have downloaded a online map. Let's make sure that somebody knows where the heck you're going to be. Your wife, a loved one, or something. Somebody should know where you're going to be. On this last trip I went to, it was hard for me to explain to my wife where exactly I was going to be. I didn't know for sure if I would have the cell coverage out there to leave her a pin. But my buddy Ian and Eli knew exactly the spot I was going to. I told my wife if something happens, contact them. I also contacted them to let them know I was going to be in that area. And if she contacted them, that way they would know where to come look for me. So make sure you got somebody that knows where you're going to be. Now this may not be your first camping trip, but this is your first solo trip. So if we're pre-planning anyway, let's plan to have good weather. So I know you can't always count on what the weatherman says, but if you look at the weather and it says there's a 50-60% chance of rain, maybe pick a different weekend. Like I said before, you want to make this an enjoyable experience so you'll want to do it again. So why set yourself up for failure with just a nasty weather weekend? So check that weather, make sure you have a good weekend, and get ready to go. Now along those same lines, let's talk about the seasons. So it would be better for you for your first solo trip to do a late spring, early fall kind of time frame. This way it's not too hot and it's not too cold. Again, you're going to have a more enjoyable experience. It won't be too hard on you. Next up, I want you to know your gear. I want you to know how to set up your gear. I want you to go ahead and pre-set it up, whether that's setting it up at home or inside the house or what have you. If you're going to use a hammock, make sure you know how to set your hammock up correctly and comfortably. If you're going to set up a tent, make sure that you can set the tent up by yourself. Some tents are pretty difficult to set up by yourself, so I want you to know your gear, and I want you to be comfortable setting up your gear. I don't want you to get out there, be frustrated, have a hard time getting it set up, or maybe not get it set up at all. That's going to ruin your trip. Now, we've already talked about seasons, but along with that gear that we're talking about, I want you to make sure that the gear you have is the correct gear for the season. Make sure that the temperature rating on your gear is going to work out. If it's going to be late spring and kind of warm, you don't want that 30-degree sleeping bag. But if it's going to be late fall and it might be getting pretty cold at night, you're definitely going to want to make sure you have something that's going to keep you warm. Now for your first solo camp, I would suggest a car camp. And I'd suggest that for a couple of reasons. One, this way you can carry more gear. If you've got more gear, you can decide what you're going to use and what you're not going to use. And this will help you when you decide to pack a bag and head out into the woods just with a backpack. It'll kind of give you a little bit of experience in what you're going to take and what you're not going to take. Two, the vehicle is security. If for whatever reason, at night, you get spooked for whatever reason, that car is some security. It's right there. You can always hop in it, take shelter, what have you. If you have a little storm blow up that's a little worse than you thought it was going to be, you've got that vehicle there just to kind of make you a little more comfortable. If you have found a location that doesn't have water, you can bring a jug with water. Makes it a lot easier on you than having to pack it in. Got me a little cup of oatmeal. Really, really good. Super easy. Nothing to wash when I'm done. So this kind of brings me to my next point. We're smoothing it out here. We're not roughing it. So make sure you have some comfort items that are going to help you get through the night. Bring a comfortable chair. Something that you're not going to mind sitting in for a while and spending some time. You're going to be by yourself. Maybe bring a book or download a book on your phone. Or like me, I'll download a book, I'll download a movie or something on my phone, something to pass some time after it gets dark and you really don't have a lot to do. During the day, you can always bring some sort of project, whether you're gonna carve a little something or just some sort of project to pass the time. That's always a good thing to do. That way you are not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, getting bored, because when you're out by yourself, it is pretty easy to get bored sometimes. Make some good, easy food, something that you're going to enjoy, but it's not going to be a terrible mess to clean up. Last up, don't be afraid to pull the plug if you feel the need. For whatever reason, if things aren't going right, you have bad weather coming in, you're not feeling well, you have an allergic reaction to something, or you forgot something at home you're going to need, don't be so macho that you can't say, okay, this isn't working out, pull the plug, and head home. After all, we're supposed to be having fun. Now, by all means, I'm not telling you to just give up and go home from the slightest thing. But make sure it's an option. Don't be so macho that you're going to put yourself in a bad situation or just not have a good time. Listen, guys, the goal of this channel is to entertain, to inspire, and to instruct. I hope today that you learned something. I hope I showed you that you too can go out there and do that solo camp you've been wanting to do. Just make sure you have all your stuff together and make sure you're ready. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it that big thumbs up for me. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down there. You can follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next week. So you guys are wanting to do some hammock. Now along those same lines, let's talk about, this kind of brings me to my next point. Smoothing it. So this is a good time for you to, so this actually kind of brings me to my next point. We're smoothing it out here. We're not roughing it. So